Take back your soul. This is another transmission from Mahadeva here at ThunderWizard.com headquarters, where you find the world's only unified spiritual energy system at ThunderWizard.com. Get ready, because here I come. Hello YouTube, this is Mahadeva, the Thunder Wizard, and today I'm going to talk to you about something that you probably think is completely, totally bonkers. But I'm here to tell you that the biggest threat to your freedom is your ability to investigate, experience, and talk about extraterrestrial involvement with Earth. So you're wondering, what the heck, how far off the deep end have I gone? Well, I've gone pretty far off the deep end, but I've never felt more connected to understanding the basic fundamental truth that is preventing human beings from evolving to the next level. So what we're going to be talking about eventually in this video is we're going to be talking about how the government is actively seeking to make it illegal for you to investigate and talk about extraterrestrial involvement with planet Earth. This isn't just me giving out some conspiracy theory, unproven stuff. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna play for you audio from the most recent UFO hearing that went on in Congress. Just recently, as you know, the Pentagon released supposed videos of extraterrestrial craft and hinting that UFOs were a threat to national security. In that seemingly totally innocuous hearing, there is actually communication from not the Pentagon, but from members of Congress who are pushing for some kind of free speech blocks, some kind of censorship against you even talking about your experiences with extraterrestrials, your opinions, or anything else. In other words, what the government wants to do, and they're making it clear. It goes right past us because we don't pay attention. We don't think it means anything. But Congress, or at least some people in Congress, want to make it illegal for you to investigate UFOs, to investigate extraterrestrials, to talk about extraterrestrials. They want to have there be legal penalties, which is censorship. They want to censor your ability to communicate, investigate, and ultimately experience interactions with potential extraterrestrial intelligence. So we're going to be talking about that. Let me give you a little background to help you understand why this is such a huge deal. So we're already in a police state world. I'm talking here on YouTube, and I am prohibited by YouTube to talk about current events. There are things going on that have been going on for the past 2 years that I am not allowed to even give my opinion on if it goes against the official government narrative about what is happening. If I say anything outside of that, and if there's a few certain words that I use, if I even use those words, my YouTube channel will get flagged and will get taken off of YouTube. And this may sound like an annoyance. It may sound like, just weird. We can say it's high tech, cancel culture, but it's really coming from the highest levels of government. And they want to do the same thing when it comes to just sitting around and hypothesizing. It'll be, according to them, it'll be illegal to just sit around and hypothesize about what UFOs are. You don't believe me? I'm going to play for you some audio from the most recent public hearing about this issue. But before I do, let's talk about why this is such a huge deal. So, according to the people that actually this is directed at, which would probably be Dr. Stephen Greer and others, according to these people and their research and their supposed alleged experience, the deep state of the world since 1947 has had access to alien technology and has been reverse engineering alien technology since then. And for the past 70 years, we have a secret worldwide government that is operating on the level of aliens. They're operating, their technology has, they've got they've already created craft that are, for all intents and purposes, for our eyes, alien craft, spaceships, flying saucers, the Tic Tacs, the giant ships that are flying around. They also have access to highly advanced consciousness-driven weapons, energy weapons, and abilities to monitor you in ways that you can't even begin to understand. Anyway, there's this whole big, deep conspiracy theory. By the way, it's only a theory until it's proven, and then it's a conspiracy truth, not a conspiracy theory. There's all kinds of stuff that, the people that are working for the government, the contractors that are working for the government, have publicly said that we have already achieved anything that you can see in Star Trek or Star Wars. We've already achieved it and beyond. So why is that so important? Because that is the mechanism that allows them, the deep state, the elites have this, and they use it to control the world. And they're way ahead of the curve in terms of knowing what kinds of events to create in the world in order to manipulate you out of fear. It's also a way to keep them in power, because if you had access to these technologies, there would be no need for petroleum, there would be no need for electricity, there would be no need for all of the things that the deep state makes the biggest money on. Number one is petroleum, the car that you drive. That is a technology that's completely out of date. Just like when I was a kid in the 50s and in the 60s, they were already talking about that pretty soon everybody's going to have a flying car. That's because that's where things were going. And that never occurred. And I remember thinking, once we hit the 70s and 80s, and I remember going, how come we don't have flying cars? We were supposed to have flying cars by now. Well, the reason is because if you have a flying car that operates on some other technology, then you're not buying petroleum. Petroleum makes trillions of dollars off of you going to the pump and filling up your 100-year-old jalopy technology with petroleum. There's everything else that you already know about the control of the media. The media is completely controlled by deep state narrative, that the drug companies completely controlled by deep state, that big tech, all of that. You're already aware of that, but the biggest one is petroleum. And so the point is that if you start to think differently about that, then they stop making money off of you. It's that simple. The reason why they're holding on to all of this technology and not sharing it with the world is because if they did, the world economy would completely shift. There would be no poverty. There would be, reduced illness. There would be equality in the world. And in other words, there wouldn't be a bunch of really rich people having to use governments to control a worldwide narrative. So that you can understand, but for me, that whole thing didn't really click in until it became clear to me that there are, in fact, extraterrestrial civilizations that are far beyond our comprehension, that are interacting with this planet, and that they represent the biggest threat to the deep state control of the world. They represent the biggest threat. So their prime agenda for the past 70 years has been to keep this information from you, and to keep from you the truth that you, the average person, can interact with extraterrestrial civilizations. So I'm brand new to this whole thing, at least to the best of my knowledge. And I've tried out the CE5 protocols, and I had a initially less than exciting experience, which has now begun to unfold within me. And the repercussions of this I'm seeing are astounding. And the ability for the average person to evolve beyond a earth-centered understanding is absolutely available, but that is the biggest threat. If you become aware that we are just one civilization in a universal, an intergalactic federation, if you will. I don't like that whole, New Age intergalactic federation nonsense. But the reality is that there are beings and there are civilizations that are working in concert with each other. There is a galactic peace out there. Similar to like the Star Trek idea of this, the Federation. There is this huge infinite number of civilizations that once they get to a certain level of consciousness, that it just becomes understood. There's no need for competition or war or anything like that. And the other big thing that the world hasn't wanted you to know for the past 2,000 years is that this world and this universe is not driven by physical matter, which is, by the way, the whole message of Christianity was that you don't have any power, that this world has power over you, and that God controls you, and you have no consciousness of yourself, you have no spiritual power. That's why the message that's opposite of that, the reason why in the Bible, the reason why the serpent is so frightening is because the serpent says, don't you know that you can be like God? Which means that you are God. You have the consciousness within you to be infinite, to control space, time, and matter and all of that. And the way we access that is through our innate meditative muscle that we must work on to grow. When we do that, I've learned now from personal experience that if you go into a meditative state and just imagine yourself going into space and asking and inviting a higher developed consciousness to come visit you, they will. And if you do it with an honest intention, they will show up. And that will begin a process of transformation within you that you can no longer be controlled. So that's the background about what I'm going to play for you right now. So let's go ahead and play it. And I'll stop the audio to let you know the meaning of what was just said. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to be listening to, I don't know who it was, a Congress member and representative of the Biden government in terms of, intelligence around UFOs. All right, so let's just go ahead and get started with that.
Of UAPs has attracted a lot of interest in people that are curious about this hearing today. As we talk about And I would say there's a lot of what I would call amateur interest groups that are involved in the UAP field.
Amateur interest groups. That means you. Amateur interest groups means something that is not sanctioned by the intelligence community, the deep state military intelligence community. You got that? So they're making it sound like what they're doing is they're devaluing anybody's research if they're not part of the government. So it sounds innocent at first. Amateur groups. But now they're going to go, now this person, I don't know who this person is, this congressman is going to now go in and seek to characterize these amateur groups as actually being a threat to U.S. national security. Let's listen.
My question is, when there are unsubstantiated claims or manufactured claims of UAPs or kind of false information that's put out there, what are the consequences for people that are involved with that or groups that are involved with that?
Okay, did you hear how fast that went? That went from amateur groups. If I just say there's amateur groups interested in UAP or UFO phenomena, you don't have any judgment of that. You go, yeah, I'm an amateur, I'm looking into this, I'm interested in this. He went from what happens when these people, and then he didn't even go through the possibility of amateur groups finding out the truth. He didn't say, what efforts are you making to coordinate with amateur groups who might have evidence of UFOs and ETs? He didn't do that. He said, amateur groups have interest in this. And then he went right into characterizing that they're going to have false, misleading, misinformation. We keep hearing about this word misinformation. I have to, on this channel, I have to say things according to a certain narrative. Otherwise, I will be accused of that very same thing. Do you understand? This is where, do you see how fast it went? It went from, average people are looking at this. And then he goes right into, what are you going to do to penalize them for investigating this? Let's continue.
So one of the concerns that we have is that there are a lot of individuals and groups that are putting information out there that could be considered to be somewhat self-serving.
All right, did you hear that? That is called projection. Unconscious projection or psychological projection is when you project onto others your own state of mind. You either do it consciously like this, which is called gaslighting, where you accuse somebody of doing the very thing you're doing and you're conscious of doing it, which is what's happening here. Or unconsciously, where there's things going on inside of you that you're not willing or able to look at and you see it in other people. But this is called gaslighting. So he just went in and said there are organizations. What he's talking about Dr. Stephen Greer, who has been doing this for decades now. And other people, there's other people out there and other groups, and could even be you, that are out there, giving out this subversive information about UFOs. Okay, we'll go back and play the whole thing together so you can see how fast they jump from, and bear in mind, this is being broadcast to the whole world. The whole point of this hearing, because there's all kinds of hearings going on behind, closed doors, which you have no knowledge of. This is a show they're doing in front of the world, and it's very clear. They're trying to say that this UFO phenomenon is a threat, and you can only interpret it through the narrative we're going to give you, and only The intelligence community and the governmental community and the military community has the right to investigate and talk about this. And if you, as a citizen, want to understand what is going on in your universe, you will be seen as a threat, and you will be penalized. You will be legally punished. This is what he's trying to ask questions about.
We're trying to do what's in the best interest of, one, the Department of Defense, and then two, what's in the best interest of the public, to ensure that we can put factual-based information back into the mainstream and back into the bloodstream of the reporting media that we have, so people understand what's there. It's important.
Okay, did you hear that? What he just said was that he only wants mainstream media to have control over getting information to you about UFOs and extraterrestrials. That's what he just said.
Because we are attempting, as this hearing has drawn out, to understand, one, what may just be natural phenomenon, two, what may be sensor phenomenology or things that were happening with sensors, three, what may be legitimate counterintelligence threats to places that we have or bases or installations, or security threats to our platforms.
All right. What he wants you to believe is that he's not saying, but what has been going on for 70 years is that extraterrestrials will show up at nuclear facilities and probably other military sites and facilities that we're not aware of. And they have shown time and again that they have the ability to completely take over those facilities and shut them down. There have been nuclear tests. For instance, there was a nuclear test where a rocket was shot off into space headed towards the moon, and they were going to detonate a nuclear bomb. They were going to see if they could launch a nuclear missile from the Earth that would go and strike the moon and set off a nuclear bomb. And from the moment that it was launched, a UFO showed up and went around and shot a few, energy beams at it and completely dismantled it. They've done other things where they show up at nuclear facilities and they'll shut down the whole facility and then turn it back on. The interesting thing is they turn it back on, but they let the military know that they have the ability to shut this down if they choose to. This is the threat he's talking about. He's not coming out and saying it, but he's introducing it. And he's saying, counterintelligence. Is this from another country? So if you start thinking, okay, this is the Russians or this is the Chinese, these UAPs, they have technology. They want to frighten you, because if you think that the Russians or the Chinese have this advanced technology that might be a threat to us, you need to know that. So they want you to want the government to create these kinds of technologies. And on the other hand, they want you to not want anybody else to have them. And if they do, they're a threat. All right, let's keep going.
And anything that diverts us off of what we have with the resources that have been allocated to us, send us off in these spurious chases and hunts that are just not helpful. And they also they also contribute to the undermining of the confidence that the Congress and the American people have that we are trying to get to the root cause of what's happening.
All right. He just said that these non-approved groups erode your confidence in the government's handling of UFOs. And he's saying that's a problem. So in other words, if you say anything, like in the past 2 years, if you say anything that goes against the medical narrative, you'll get shut down. So he wants to say, if you say anything that undermines the government military position on UFOs, that they want to shut you down. They want to take away your freedom of speech. I'm already experiencing that here on YouTube. I can't talk freely about things that have been going on for the past 2 years. They want to make it illegal for you to even talk about UFOs. We'll talk about why would they want that. That sounds so strange. Why would they want that?
Here, report on that, and then feed that back into our national security apparatus so we are able to protect the American people and our allies. So it is harmful, it is hurtful, but hopefully if we get more information out there, we'll start to lessen the impact of some of those spurious reports.
So just taking that a step further, so that misinformation, false narratives, manufactured, so what are the consequences? Are there legal consequences? Are there examples that you can give us where people have been held accountable by this misinformation or disinformation?
I can't give you, any examples where somebody's been legally held liable for putting something out there, but...
Well, I guess what's the deterrent from people engaging in this activity?
I don't know. I don't have that answer. That's something that, welcome the dialogue with Congress to talk about that with the members who, help legislate those laws.
Did you hear that? This whole dialogue was scripted. You are meant to believe that this was spontaneous, that these guys are showing up, the military showing up, innocently going, hey, so... we just want to let you know there's this stuff out there, this UAP stuff, and we don't know what it is, but it could be a threat. And then this congressman goes, wait a minute, what about all the people out there that are saying things that aren't government approved? And then the military guy says, well, that kind of cuts into our ability to do our job, because then we have to chase down these false leads, and then it erodes our the trust of you in us and our job. And then the congressman goes, oh, we have to do something about that. Are there any laws against it? And the guy says, well, no, there aren't any laws, but that's what you're here for. The Congress is the people who enact laws. So if you want to enact laws to make it against the law to speak about it, that's your job. And, that's not us. We're the military. But if you want to put people in prison for investigating or speaking about UFOs, or saying that UFOs are extraterrestrials who are friendly, who are going to give us free energy and get rid of poverty and pollution, and help people to evolve spiritually so that they can become, super beings like those aliens. If you want to put people in prison for exploring that, investigating and talking about that, or trying to connect with UFOs on their own, God forbid, you're the Congress, you can do that. We're just the military. We just do what you guys say. You wouldn't have heard that probably if you just listened to it. I'm going to play it again from the beginning, and I won't interrupt, but listen to the whole thing. This is a scripted conversation, and it's a show designed for the public. And the reason why that this show is going on is because the end game they've been working on for the past 70 years is to create a false war with or a false attack from extraterrestrials, which means that for the past 70 years they've been creating their own UFO army. So you can't tell the difference between an actual extraterrestrial craft and a deep state black ops military craft. So the Tic Tacs, there's lots of flying saucers, lots of UFOs that show up, especially anytime that a UFO shows up and there's some kind of a natural disaster, which has happened a few times. UFO will show up and, there will be, a fire, there will be a forest fire, or a UFO will show up and people will get all kinds of radiation burns and things like that. Anything that has to do with that, or UFOs and abduction stories, anything like that is actually deep state, human created, that's been going on for the past 70 years. The Betty and Barney Hill abduction was a good example. In that abduction, because that happened in 66. Before 66, there was no reports of anybody being abducted by aliens and experimented on. This was the first time in history we ever heard about that. And Betty and Barney Hill, that whole story, one of the things that supposedly proved it was that in 1966 they did not have pregnancy tests, that any kind of modern pregnancy test, and so Betty Hill had been abducted, and the aliens used this giant needle and stuck it in her navel and told her, we're testing to see if you're pregnant. And then 10 years later, people were saying, see, that proves that these were extraterrestrials, because we didn't use big giant needles to do pregnancy tests back in 1966. So this is really advanced. Of course, now, pregnancy tests are, you just pee on something. And, there's absolutely nothing invasive. So the idea that these highly advanced aliens have to use big giant needles is a giveaway that this is human. That humans have been experimenting on humans for 60 years under the guise of these alien abductions. So they have the capability to falsely create an alien attack. And so what is coming, according to Werner von Braun, the guy who, the Nazi scientist that, the US took over and used to start our space program, the guy who really was behind, creation of rockets and all of that. He said on his deathbed, he said, watch out, the final move that they're going to use is that they're going to launch a false alien attack, which means they will, just like 9/11, they will create an attack and they will cause damage. And it's not just to, in the case of 9/11, it was about uniting the Western world against the Arab world. What's going to happen in this is that they're going to try and unite the entire world against a false alien threat. The whole point of that is then to take over completely your free speech, exactly what the World Economic Forum wants, which is you will own nothing, you will rent everything, and they will have all this control over you. They will turn us into a slave world. That's the point of all of this. Now, you didn't hear that in this hearing, but that's the point of this hearing. The point of this hearing is to first get into your mind that UFOs do exist and they might be a threat. We don't know if they're Russian or Chinese, but they want to put the fear in you so that they want to then criminalize anybody who is investigating and talking about this on a public level, because that, according to them, will take away the military intelligence's ability to figure out what is really going on and protect you from a threat. Let's listen to the whole thing from the beginning, and then you can hear all of that in this, and we'll leave it at that. All right, let me back this up here to the beginning of that section. Okay, here we go.
To people that go against the narrative. Let's roll this clip real quick.
Sure.
Obviously, this topic of UAPs has attracted a lot of interest in people that are curious about this hearing today. As we talk about, and I would say there's a lot of what I would call amateur interest groups that are involved in the UAP field. My question is, when there are unsubstantiated claims or manufactured claims of UAPs or kind of false information that's put out there, what are the consequences for people that are involved with that or groups that are involved with that?
So one of the concerns that we have is that there are a lot of individuals and groups that are putting information out there that could be considered to be somewhat self-serving. We're trying to do what's in the best interest of, one, the Department of Defense, and then two, what's in the best interest of the public, to ensure that we can put factual-based information back into the mainstream and back into the bloodstream of the reporting media that we have, so people understand what's there. It's important because we are attempting, as this hearing has drawn out, to understand, one, what may just be natural phenomenon, two, what may be sensor phenomenology or things that were happening with sensors, three, what may be legitimate counterintelligence threats to places that we have or bases or installations, or security threats to our platforms. And anything that diverts us off of what we have with the resources that have been allocated to us, send us off in these spurious chases and hunts that are just not helpful. And they also they also contribute to the undermining of the confidence that the Congress and the American people have that we are trying to get to the root cause of what's happening here, report on that, and then feed that back into our national security apparatus so we are able to protect the American people and our allies. So it is harmful, it is hurtful, but hopefully if we get more information out there, we'll start to lessen the impact of some of those spurious reports.
So just taking that a step further, so that misinformation, false narratives, manufactured, so what are the consequences? Are there legal consequences? Are there examples that you can give us where people have been held accountable by this misinformation or disinformation?
I can't give you, any examples where somebody's been legally held liable for putting something out there, but...
Well, I guess what's the deterrent from people engaging in this activity?
I don't know. I don't have that answer. That's something that, welcome the dialogue with Congress to talk about that with the members who, help legislate those laws.
So
that last sentence is the one that puts fear into me. That he's saying, we're here to talk with Congress so you can pass laws to make it a federal offense. I mean, you're being, you're a traitor to your country if you investigate, talk about UFOs or extraterrestrials, or God forbid, reach out on your own to engage with them. So this explains a lot to me. So I've had one CE5 protocol experience myself. I was brand new to it. I didn't really know what to expect. I made some mistakes. Part of the question is I'm trying to figure out what is in the interest of these advanced beings. Why would they go to the trouble of, when I reach out to them, and I meditate and I say, hey, I'd like to meet you. Why do they show up? I mean, what's in it for them? And why is it done so secretly? The other thing that happened to me in my experience was that I found it very interesting at the phenomenon that I experienced was something that was directed completely to me, and that if anybody was in the vicinity, they never would have seen or noticed anything. But what has happened to me since that experience is, there was the conscious experience that I had, and then for the past few days, there's been an unconscious expansion within me that, my dreams are changing, and, when I analyze the dreams, I realize they're just dreams, just to make clear. I'm not like having any visions, but I'm having really intense dreams that when I analyze it, the meaning of the dreams is that my unconscious understanding of the universe is beginning to unravel and expand in ways. And my personal experience of myself is I'm not just a citizen of the United States or a citizen of planet Earth. I'm realizing that I have a strong connection to the entire universe and all of the conscious beings in the universe. And so my nation, if you will, has now expanded far beyond the borders of planet Earth. And all of that is a threat to people who want to control you. And if you listen to that, the whole message behind what this person was saying, what's his name? Let's take a look and see. What is his name? The Honorable Ronald Moultrie, who is, representing the military intelligence community. That the whole thing that he was saying is that this is dangerous. How can communication and scientific investigation into reality be dangerous if you don't want to control people's reality? This comes down to them wanting to control reality. So what I find interesting, this isn't an open-ended, I mean, the whole point of that dialogue was that other people besides the government and the deep state intelligence community is researching, experimenting with contact with extraterrestrials. And what are you, the military, going to do to stop them? Are you going to put them in jail? That's the meaning behind that. And the deep state military says, hey, you guys can pass the laws. If you want to pass laws to make it illegal to talk about, investigate, or experience extraterrestrials, we welcome that. So this is far huge. And again, why is this a big deal? Because there's no reason to make this kind of a public spectacle unless you have plans going forward. And so they're laying out the plans. The first plan is to reveal to you that there are these things called extraterrestrials and they have technology beyond ours. You should be afraid. 2, they're a threat to us and they're a threat to our security. And he says we're worried about anybody that is a threat to our military platforms, meaning all of your military defenses, nuclear and otherwise. We're afraid of anybody who could be a threat to our military superiority. And 3, if these people are allowed to openly talk about UFOs and come to conclusions about extraterrestrials, this is treason and these people should be put in jail. That was the message of what you just heard. And the only reason that they would do that publicly, because they've been doing it privately, because there have been people, whenever they get too close, like I said, people who have, and I remember watching it, the guy who invented a car engine that ran on water. I remember that really happened. And then that guy mysteriously died. And his last words were, "Oh my God, I've been poisoned." Tesla's disappearance. So many people who invent things and then mysteriously disappear or die, or these inventions mysteriously disappear. They've been doing it covertly, but now they're doing it openly because the threat to you becoming aware of what's going on and their control over you is becoming such a threat to them that they now have to come out and do this public scripted show. Because their next step is going to be 2 things. They're going to say, you can't investigate or talk about UFOs, misinformation. You can't give misinformation about UFOs, and you can't investigate it. That'll be treason, because if you're investigating it, that'll be like you trying to get on, Area 51. You'll be shot on sight. And what they're not saying is that if you realize that you can be part of the intergalactic community of conscious beings who have the ability to go beyond space-time, you won't need us anymore. So we're going to have to create a false flag, false alien invasion so that we can completely control you. And it's the exact strategy that they used over these past 2 years to make you afraid of things I can't talk about. And they've successfully used media and big tech to prevent me from talking about it in any kind of real public way. So there it is. I'm going to continue to do my CE5 stuff. I've got more equipment. I was going to go out and do it last night, but I was extremely tired. It was starting to rain. But now if you want to be a rebel, The most rebellious thing you can do to rebel against the deep state is to do CE5 protocols. So not only does that finally, I finally have an avenue of, the spiritual warrior. This is my fight. My fight against the deep state is to expand my consciousness and my awareness through working with advanced beings and civilizations that clearly have a very strong, keen interest in giving us the ability to outgrow and overcome the literal psychological and spiritual prison that we've been put in. The Matrix is real. It's just not what people think. It's not a computer program. It's a thought control. The biggest threat to your personal, political, financial, physical, spiritual, psychological freedom is this. Not being able to have the fundamental right to explore, discuss, and evolve your understanding of your place in this world and in this universe. So join me if you wish. You can look up CE5 protocols and do it yourself. That's the great thing. You can do things that the deep state can't do because these civilizations obviously have the ability to know what your intent is, and they're not interacting with the deep state. The deep state has to steal whatever information they have, but you can get it directly from them. And so if we do this, once we get to a certain level, if enough people do this, this will completely, totally dismantle, destroy, and defeat this deep state matrix of psychological and spiritual control. All right, so that's it for me, guys. I will see you guys all very soon, and take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.